The dirt from the ground, the yells, the blood, the yelling. God, the yelling. The fierce battle that was raging on. He had already killed 39 changelings in the fierce battle between the Royal Guard and the Changeling Army. He remembered what he told Twilight and them, AJ. He had seen the emotion in their face when he said this. Don't worry, I'll be back. Whether it be me or a box. What he meant by that, of course, was a coffin. Whether he'd go home in a box or he'd go home himself. Whether he'd go home at all. He didn't care. He had something to do. It was to protect. He had met up with Shining's division. What they had done is they built a defensive perimeter, and then they had offensive forces that pushed out. As soon as the defensive was established, they proceeded with an offensive. People staying back and guarding in the front line. Well, the front line they had pushed the changelings back to. Of course, Mark had pushed himself. His wings turned to steel. He would fly into a near group of changelings, spinning his wings, spinning, twirling around. And immediately, the feathers would shoot from his body. But instead of falling at a soft, gentle pace, they would shoot out like a ravenous, speeding spike. And it was sharp to the touch, and would immediately pierce anything it came into contact with. However, his shield, well, he discarded it for now. For now he had two blades, as short and as long, holding them in both hands. It was awkward, but he was skilled enough. He remained in the position. He would slash, stab, and do overhead swings. Anything to make sure his enemy remained dead. There were many of them. A few changelings had decided to rush him. What he did for this is he did something rather interesting. He just stood there, waiting for them. They were stupid, they wouldn't get it. As soon as they were nearly on top of him, both blades were angled in his hands, and he lunged forward, yanking them upwards, slamming underneath both of their jaws into their brainstems, killing them instantly. Yanking them out, doing a very skillful twirl, and moving to the side quickly, evading to his right, slamming his short sword into the snout of one, into his skull, killing him. He yanked it out quickly, and turned, taking his boot and slamming it against the side of one's head, then pushing back off of him, only to turn, taking both blades into one hand, holding them together and ramming it through the chest of a changeling that had flown nearly right on top of him, killing it instantly. The battle raged. Both sides suffered. but the changelings suffered the most, obviously. They may have had more, but the Royal Guard had an advantage. However, as a wise man once said, there is no greater love than for one to lay his life down for his friend. As if things couldn't get any worse. Whilst distracted, Mark had holstered his short sword, using his long sword. As he was preoccupied and had the block, a changeling took notice. He flew over, grabbing a spear from one of the royal guards that was laying on the ground, moving, hoisting it back with his magic, and shooting it forward. A friend, a good soul, a brother of someone important, had jumped in front of it, taking the blow. Of course, this would have been, well, good. However, if the weapon wasn't enchanted and could easily penetrate and destroy the armor. That spear was enchanted to serve one purpose. As soon as it made initial contact, it pierced the flesh. The tip of the spear immediately exploded into not like a large explosion, but a small magical burst, which caused small shrapnel pieces. When Shining had fallen over, immediately he knew what he had to do. He couldn't let them lose their leader, and he couldn't let Twilight lose, well, the brother. Wrapping him in a hold, taking his wings, he flew back to the defensive line. Once they'd seen that, the soldiers had gotten a boost of rage and began fighting harder and faster in the name of their dear captain. Mark had flown down, planting both of his feet into the ground. Where once lay grass, lay dirt. He went over and laid him down. Many of the men looked in horror as Mark took off his chest plate. It was bad. The initial contact of the spear had landed in the lower region of his stomach, and it exploded. He immediately knew the few spots. The first 3 pieces of shrapnel shot upward into the chest. One shooting out the left side had probably fractured a rib. The other one shooting out the other side had definitely broken 2 ribs. The one shooting upward luckily missed the heart, but caused a lot of blood, most definitely. The one that had landed in the middle had definitely pierced some of the intestine. And the 3 that shot downward, it had sliced his abdomen and his liver. And the 3rd piece that went low, it had missed a really important area, but it still cut the body nevertheless. Shining was in a great deal of pain and would most likely die without medical treatment. For anything could happen, here's what he decided to do. Mark hovered his hand over overshining. His magical essence was still regenerating. That's how he worked. His magic ran on essence. He would never truly get tired. It would never affect his stamina, but it would affect the essence inside of him. And because it was regenerating, he couldn't cast a tree of life. He had to resort to a rarer form of magic. Blood magic. Blood magic had been around for centuries. It was unique in nature. So what he did the one thing he could do. He hovered his hand over the wound. This form of blood magic. It was called that because, well, you could take a guess. He knew one of the most powerful spells in blood magic. Transformation spell. But this wasn't just teleporting. No. This was a phasing type of magic. Glow admitted his hands. The hand hovered over it. And the one area, and then a second, a third, counting onward. All of the injured areas began to light up on shining, glowing with a vast amount of energy. And those areas appeared underneath Mark's armor. He began to breathe in and out, having difficulty. He may or may not have overlooked something. Shining must have had a punctured lung. He immediately dug his fist into the ground, clenching the dirt, grinding his teeth, wings splayed out. He looked up into the heavens. As soon as the transformation spell was complete, before Shining could say another word, anything at all even, Mark soared to the skies. Looked over the battlefield and knew he had to do one thing. He immediately flew up and up and up and up, flying up and up and up and up. When he was flying up and up and up and up, once he was in the sky, about 15,000 feet. Once he was 15,000 feet. He looked down, focusing all of his magical essence, energy, everything, as he felt weak. Taking the tip of his sword and angling it down. Immediately, magical energy began to focus into the sword itself. Focus into him. He had seen where a very large portion of changelings were, and then shot down like an arrow He angled himself to glide faster, further than he could go. Before impact, he remembered his mom running his hand through his hair as he faded into his sleep. As he faded away from life, he remembered. Once he slammed into the ground, a massive explosion had happened. The soldiers cheered. Mark had killed nearly half of the army in that stunt, because on impact, a massive wall of fire and lightning had shot out, slamming against many changelings. However, the consequence proved fatal. They cheered. They saw Mark get up off of his feet and gently walk toward them. His armor was melted in certain areas, dense, some even ripped off. His sword was okay. When he sheathed it, he began walking. His helmet, it was off. He tossed it off whenever he got up. However, he coughed blood. He fell to his knees as they rushed to him, and fell onto the floor below. But before passing out, he heard a voice. He knew who it was. It was his guardian, and he said, "Even though your life ends here, your job is not done. You will be brought back. Do not worry, my son."